agenda, items A and B. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make the motion.
Motion made by Brandon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Item 6, Advisory Committee report. That's on our page 27. James, why don't you come up to the podium? Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The memo, I believe, speaks for itself, but we had an interesting, on number 10, we had discussed sending out RFP for the 2024 Water Master Administrator's position. The committee voted 2 yes, 2 no, and 4 abstain. All the other votes had 9, and I don't know if there was a technical problem or what. Godey, so I reached out to him through email, and he would have been a yes as well. But through the verbal vote, I only had 8 counts on that particular topic.
Okay. And that's on discussing sending an RFP for the 2024 Water Master Administrative staff position.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to confirm, that was 2 no, 2 yes, and 2 abstain.
4 abstain.
4 abstain, thank you.
And he would have been the third yes. But
Was not on the call, he did not vote.
I did not hear him on so I sent him an email right out.
So he did not vote. Just to be clear. During the meeting, did he vote?
He did not have a verbal vote.
Thank you.
And then the last thing, it's just more of a question. I see that the administrative committee and the Water Master Committee agendas are prepared and numbered. Ours are not. I was wondering if that's something we can have done for the advisory committee as well. You mean page numbers? Yes.
And Josh, can you respond, or do you want to?
Yeah, the homework can put page numbers on the packet.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Success. Way to go, James. Any other discussion on the advisory committee report? We're on the administrative committee report. Jim, you taking that?
Yes, Chair Paris, thank you.
Thank you.
The administrative committee did meet last week. We discussed most of the items that will be covered on the agenda. We spent quite a bit of time on the financial situation of the Antelope Valley Water Master Organization. Directors Urosic and Bryden are here, and they can add anything they'd like to bring up that they'd like to cover separately.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Terry?
No, I think Jim gave a good recap. I mean, prioritization is, I think, what will be the discussion today is our fiscal crisis and how we deal with it as a board.
Great. Go. Okay, that brings us to our public hearing. And let's see, at 10:10, I'll call the public hearing to order. This is on the matter of amending the rules and regulations, placing additional limitations on new production rights and for repayment of delinquent replacement water assessment. And the purpose of the hearing is amending the rules and regulations, placing additional limitations on new production rates and for repayment of the delinquent replacement water assessment. I think I just said that. Thank you. And now we're going to have a presentation by Beth.
Council will introduce the subject. This memos and resolutions that are at issue in this public hearing have been circulated since January. We've had no opposition. It's been supported in concept by the advisory committee. The board has seen the information, the resolutions for several months. Let me give a brief background on both resolutions. The first, limitations on new production, beginning at page 33 of your packet, is based on the board's concern that people believe they were guaranteed imported water to meet their new production requirements if they have to pay RWAs or new production fees. We wanted to make it clear that this is not a guarantee, that the board reserves the right to reduce or even eliminate the application if there's insufficient imported water to meet the demand. This was a concern of the board that it be made clear in public that the importation of water to meet new production goals is not a absolute one time and not reviewed again. So there is an amendment suggested to section 14N that says, in essence, the water master's approval of new production rights in the event there's insufficient water available to replace some or all of the party's new production. The water master may, in effect, amend or revoke the new production application. This is, again, a safety valve for and a warning to the public that just because the board approves a new production application, it's dependent on the supply of supplemental water to meet that demand. So that's one of the resolutions that's being considered and open to public comment. The second one is an amendment to the rules and regs for repayment of delinquent RWAs. Starts on page 39. And again, the goal of this was to recognize that delinquent RWAs shall be due and payable at the replacement water assessment rate in effect at the date the water master receives the delinquent payment. What we had was situations where an invoice for a delinquent RWA came in 2020, let's say, and payment was made in 2022 when the RWA effective rate was substantially more. And the board had concern that we rectify that situation. As a result, we're proposing the amendment of Section 11G to the rules and regulations. That's an introduction to both. Nothing new here, but we finally got the notice out 30 days for public hearing and encourage the board, pursuant to public input, to adopt the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any other information from staff? We're done. Then statements from public. Is there any public comment? Anybody like to discuss our amendments? Seeing none, I'll declare this hearing closed at 10:14 a.m. Very pleased hearing, Craig. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that brings us to item 9, consideration and possible action to approve amendment to the rules and regulations. And we're going to take these items. We'll start with A, and that's Resolution 2335, amendment to rules and regulations placing limitations on new production.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2235.
I second that.
2335.
2335, sorry.
And your second for 2235?
Yes.
Is there any discussion?
Just a comment, I guess, to the board and the staff and council. I think both of these are great work of identifying, this is in the judgment and the process and adding it to it. So I support it fully, and as well as the next.
Great, thank you. Very good. You're good? Seeing no further discussion, any public discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 2335, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Brings us to 9B, Resolution 2336, amendment to the rules and regulations of repayment of delinquent RWAs. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2336?
I'd like to approve, I make a motion to approve 2336.
Motion made by Brandon. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Derek. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 2336, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Now on item 10, consideration and possible action on Hallmark Group's amendment number 2. And that brings us to item today. update on cash flow and FDIC insurance.
Thank you, Chair Harris. These two items, 10A and 10B, are interrelated, and staff's prepared a memo that's in your board packet beginning on page 44 that summarizes the current cash flow position of the Antelope Valley Water Master. And in short, based on the most current estimates by the financial staff, it looks like that by late July or August, the Antelope Valley Water Master will be out of money to conduct the normal business of the Water Master. And this isn't a new message to the board. We've been talking about this practically since January, and we've updated those a number of times to the board over the last few months. And so today, I'll give you a high-level overview of this issue, and then Jacqueline Harris, the financial administrator for the Hallmark Group on behalf of the Antelope Valley Water Master, will give you a detailed look at this and be able to answer any of the detailed questions you have about this situation. But I'll look at where are we, how did we get here, and what do we do next, because that's really what you got to figure out today. So where are we? In short, we're running out of money. I mean, that's the short of it. And by July or August, our best current estimate using available information and projections, that's still the timeline we're on. So how do we get here is a question I know a lot of folks are wrestling with and trying to figure out. And I'll start by going through that a little bit. So last fall, when the board adopted the budget, it was clear and decided that the board would not have a balanced budget, that you utilize the cash on hand to fund the shortfall that was projected at the budget that was adopted. And it was the estimates in that budget were the best estimates at the time. And they utilized the projected level of effort that was anticipated at that time, and relied on estimates of what it would take to accomplish the task and the given workload. So a lot of assumptions into the budget that I can go into detail if you have questions about those. But the reality is those assumptions didn't all work out. We've had an increased workload. We've had estimates of the time to achieve the items that were already projected taking longer than anticipated. And we had the addition of tasks that were beyond the scopes of any of the consultants in all three categories. So that increased the costs of the Water Master organization. And that's how you get to these places. Your expenses exceeded the projected revenues, and expenses have been higher than normal, or not normal, projected. So what do we do next? That's the question this board is faced with today. And we've been talking about developing a long-term cash flow management strategy and projection. We presented a few times to this board Hallmark's thoughts on how to engage us to assist in that. But regardless of who does it, that's certainly a need of the Antelope Valley Water Master. But the most urgent need is you've got to raise funds through an assessment, and the supplemental assessment of some magnitude. And when we did the budget, we did the quick math that on the estimated budget, an increase of about $1.80 would have balanced the budget based on the projections at the time. And this board may recall that discussion of if you went to $6.80, that would have balanced the budget based on projected expenses. So we're just giving you a quick summary. $1.80 increase won't solve your problem because your expenses are greater than we projected. So, considering options available to the board, you pay us to give you recommendations. That's what we do. We're recommending that you do a supplemental assessment and an expedited basis, implemented as soon as possible at least $5 an acre foot. That will carry you need to develop enough funds on hand, not just to complete the current calendar year, but to have cash on hand for the first quarter of next year, and to allow you to continue to function as an organization during that first quarter prior to next year's assessments coming in. There's a lot of options that are available to the board. We've heard from differing stakeholders about ideas. You've got recommendations from the advisory committee that are included in their memo. We can go through any of those. In your packet, we did prepare some slides. I'd like to have Jacqueline Harris walk you through that and then provide additional information from Jacqueline's perspective. She manages this information on a daily basis for the Water Master as a homework employee. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jacqueline to walk you through the slides that are in your packet.
Thank you, Jim. Jacqueline, are you ready?
I am, thank you. The factors, Jim discussed quite a few of the factors contributing to the Water Master's cash deficit. I presented a graph here that shows the revenue in dark blue bar and the expenses in gray bar, and the cash balance declining from May to December in the red line. Your cash balance is notated in the right-hand axis, and the revenue and expenses in the left axis. Again, as Jim mentioned, I not only support a supplemental assessment of at a minimum of $5, but I also would recommend that the 2024 assessments be increased, and that will largely depend on the dollar amount for those increases would depend on the budget for the 2024 year. And also I would highly recommend, as Jim mentioned, no matter who does it, a cash flow that projected at least 2 to 3 years out to determine what that assessment rate, what the assessment rates for the fixed assessment rates for 2024 and years beyond should be. Obviously, Jim discussed the rate of inflation affecting all contracted services, as well as the volume of work affecting the level of expenses that we've incurred January through May, or January through April, as this report is. You also have, there's been a steady decline in variable assessment revenue, and administration transition to third-party vendor. That has been significantly more of an undertaking than I think anyone involved has estimated in the initially when it was undertaken. Are there any questions on this slide?
Jacqueline, this is Rob. Can you explain the steady decline of your assessment revenue so everybody understands what that meant?
Yes, obviously the fixed fee assessments have remained steady as they would based on production rates, correct? And then, but the variable assessments have been on a steady decline as intended in the judgment for producers to near the safe yield, the native safe yield. And therefore, Josh, do you have the slide on the variable revenue?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, so you can see the variable assessment revenue. In 2017 was, of course, the first year. 2018 spiked. There was a little bit of a catch-up during that year. And then you can see the steady decline from 2018. In 2018, it was about $130,000 in variable assessment revenue. And that was very early on in the judgment when producers obviously had not yet began to reduce their production to the degree that they have over the next 5 years. The 2023 variable assessment revenue at $5 per acre foot was just right at $40,000, which was a 325% decrease from 2018.
Sorry, I had you guys say that those were in our packet. Those slides are not in our packet. We have your proposal, just so everyone knows, those slides were not in our packet.
Thank you for making that clear. Are there any questions?
Oh, that's a good explanation. Thank you, Jacqueline.
I do.
Obviously, this does not include this graphic on your screen now does not include our, RWA or applications. And it's solely, and it doesn't include fixed. Those are all either direct reimbursables or restricted or fixed. So what we're looking at here is just the variable assessment revenue.
Understood. We have some questions. Jacqueline, Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, you touched on it, but as Rob asked you to explain that reduction, but I think it's important for everyone to understand the replacement water assessments and the restriction of those, please. Or council can combination of both, whoever wants to.
I don't mind taking that. Again, this is Jacqueline. And so replacement water assessments, the assessment fee income that is received by the water master, billed and received, is restricted for the purpose of replacement water purchases. So there is no use available in the general asset group. General asset group is used to fund the administration of the water master, as well as legal and engineering and all other costs associated with the water master that are not replacement water assessments. So any cash received from RWA assessments is restricted solely for the purchase of replacement water purchases and is not available for the general fund.
This comes out, and I believe, Jacqueline, you have comments on this in the audit review.
Correct. If anybody has read the prior year's audit, there is a concern, a great concern on my own part, that the restricted balances are misstated. Now that does the results of the 2021 audit. That does not carry forward into 2022 or 2023 administration, and the reason being is because all along in every board meeting and with every set of financials, what you are seeing are truly what is truly restricted. So that does not tie to the 2021 audit. So there is just a disconnect there, and that will be corrected with issuance of the 2022 audit. But again, it does not affect the cash balances that have been reported thus far, because those are true cash balances from the books of record for the water master.
Thank you. Other questions?
Jacqueline, I really appreciate your work putting this together. This is Brandon Andrews. I see that it's a 325% decrease in the revenues. Basically, we just lost $140,000 a year worth of income. What types of increases have we seen on legal and the other charges that you talked about with the increased expenditures? Can you give us a snapshot on what that's looking like?
I do not. I have not done that analysis. In the spirit of reserving as much cash as possible in the water master, Hallmark has tried to do what is a minimalist approach to providing sufficient information to make decisions without, if you will, running up our bill and making things worse. So while I absolutely can do an analysis on that and present that the increases in engineering, administration, and legal with respect to the budget with respect to last year and some of the reasons therein that would require a separate analysis. But I'm absolutely willing to do that, but I would need approval from the board to move further with additional analysis.
No, I don't want to spend any more money.
And Director Calandria, I do believe that last year's budget did have a comparison of the proposed budget versus the previous year, and there were increases.
Yeah, it's just like Brandon's questioning, when you say that it's a 325% decrease, and then he's kind of asking you where those increases are, you know.
Just trying to understand it.
Yeah, me too.
I do know that. Sorry.
I mean, I think I've said in meetings, compression of them, right? So you've had compressed revenue, you've had inflation, natural inflation, we've had higher litigation, we've had getting off what I'd say a subsidized administration to, a third-party administration, and it's just compressed.
Yeah.
And it's got us here today.
Yeah, I mean, we know all those things, but at the same time, it's always good to have the picture of exactly where those things are if there's a statement being made. And I'm not disagreeing with the statement. I'm just saying it's hard to realize, because yes, you can say there's inflation of 10% across the board. There's this, there's that. But we should be knowing everything when we're making such huge decisions, like needing to put in an assessment. And then I'm also seeing here that our legal counsel is not suggesting that we do a supplemental assessment, because that could pose a greater risk of legal challenges. So these are very complex issues, and I understand all that. It's just, too, when statements are being made, I don't know. We have a lot of information for us, but like some of the things, the public, I don't think, is understanding it, because you clearly said here, the public is misunderstanding the 255 that are in restricted for the purchase of replacing water, and but they're not understanding that. And it was many, many years to get us to this position, and there's a lot going on, and everybody, the advisory board, everybody really needs to be able to understand exactly what we're talking about.
If I could address Director McLaren's comments, maybe that would add some perspective. I couldn't agree with you more, Director McLaren. That's one of the reasons when we were brought on board, one of the first recommendations we made was to do a cash flow projection, to have public involvement to do that and hear and address those questions. We just haven't done that. And so the questions you've asked are very good ones, the ones we would go through, but you haven't done that as a board yet. Yeah. So we can't provide that information unless we've been directed to do that.
But I would like to have to be more verbal on things, because I seem to get questioned on decisions I make. So I'm going to be making sure I'm very verbal, make everyone understand where I'm coming from, make everyone understand I do read my things, I do understand exactly what's going on, and I don't even think half the people know my background and where I come from. But everything I do and everything I'm looking at is for everybody involved in it.
I appreciate your comments. I would like to add one other thing to what Jim said. Also in our proposal was proposing that we provide on a monthly basis and going forward a budget to actual comparison of costs, and so that all again was included in our proposal, and that proposal has yet to be approved. So while I couldn't agree with you more, and the necessity and the importance of that information, we are still waiting approval to move forward in preparing that information.
Maybe you said. apologize for that.
Let me just clarify my position on additional increase with administrative assessment. I don't oppose it or think that it would be defeated. It just requires some more reliance on other sections of the judgment, because Section 9.1 talks about an annual administrative assessment only. And so, we've done the annual. This would be a supplemental, and I absolutely believe it's justified by the terms of the judgment, and that you have the legal authority to do it. I just was cautious in talking with Hallmark that the judgment itself on administrative assessment seems to be looking at one annual assessment.
Right. And we all understand this judgment is very open to have different opinions on how to interpret.
Okay, Russ, you had a comment?
So a point and then a couple of questions that I think you gave me a yes or no, let me expand on. The first point is that inflation exacerbates the situation, made it worse. It didn't get us. So we do this with government. And this is the diagram. So we need to deal with it. I don't want anyone to think that inflation caused this. We do this at the beginning of the year, stakeholders at the beginning of the year. There's also a difference, I think, in previous concerns about the administrator's contract, what they're meant to cover, additional services that he may be asked to do, whether or not that should be included in the contract. This is anything from all of that. At the very beginning of the year, we have the structural budget and balance for the services in the contract for without those amendments. Okay, so that's a statement. And then a couple of questions here. So I want to clarify that when we are projected to, or when we run out of money projected as early as a couple of months from now, does that mean that there's $0 in the account to pay for anything?
I'll answer that, and Jacqueline can add. But yes, that's my understanding. Is that means zero cash on hand and to cover administrative costs.
Okay, so groundwater, so material damage to the basin, Oxford.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so essentially it's $0 in the bank to pay for any activity under the water master's responsibility. Can you help me?
Yes, to clarify, Director Bryden, the only things that would be funded at that point would be the analysis of transfers that are funded separately.
Yeah, fee-based.
Fee-based ones.
Very good.
Okay, so those could continue.
Okay, so can you help me understand, with $0 in the bank, what activities would be curtailed and how this might impact not just this board, but anyone doing anything?
Yeah, so with the $0 in the bank, it's my expectation that the consultants wouldn't be performing any of the services that are covered by those funds. So that means we wouldn't be preparing for meetings, we wouldn't be handling that administrative costs, we wouldn't be doing the financial reports. Or landowners that deal with the transfers and the administrative side of it, not the analysis, that would cease. And the work that you deal with, our staff member Josh Montoya would stop. And replacement water accounting analysis could be done, but the actual administrative part of it would not be completed.
And just to clarify, Jen is speaking to when applicants have questions in preparation of their application, I would be unable to assist them. I can, however, assist those who have submitted a complete application with payment, because Hallmark and Todd Groundwater are funded through that fee.
The only wrinkle in that is the way those assessment works, the reimbursed ones, is we receive the funds for those assessments after. So we were operating that as part of the cash flow of the group. So would have to expect that the consultants would do that and wait to get reimbursed after the water master received payment.
So where I was going with this is that some may think that the administrative side of the water master is, those guys, right? We don't need to prepare reports. We don't need to pamper the board. Administrative costs. At least that's what I would think is as a ratio, as a taxpayer. But this is far more impactful than the actual business of the board, the business that helps the landowner, the business that takes care of any business that the landowner should be before the board. That gets shut down as part of this. Yeah. With the okay. All right, good.
Thank you. Any other, just to clarify, I know you mentioned that you can get, it's a little timing issue with the applications and the fees, but they get stuck and there's no board to meet because of the cost. That's assuming that legal in all parties, right?
That's correct. We would not expect the Department of Services to conduct the business of the board.
What is our dollar amount cash flow shortage through the end of the year that we should guys are seeing?
Yeah, Jacqueline, did you hear Director Calandry's question, and could you answer that?
I did, and that is, we are projecting it's approximately $230,000, $237 exactly, I believe, deficit as of December 31st. And as Jim mentioned, it's important to acknowledge that the fixed fee assessments go out in January of 2024, but the bulk of that cash flow for the receivables does not occur for 30 to 60 days. So it would be necessary to fund the first quarter as a safeguard.
So Jacqueline, on that, based upon this year, using this year's numbers, what's that first quarter cost?
I'm sorry, please ask your question.
Let me ask you this question. In 2023, this first quarter, what was our total burn rate in the first quarter? How much did we spend?
I don't have that information on hand.
I think it would be prudent, at least for me as a board member, to know that, because I think you brought...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you gave us $5, so I think you did the math on that to know what the 237 plus what the first quarter needs are to get us to that.
I can tell you that I did an analysis in order to project the cash flow through the end of the year of the prior 8 months of expenditures, and the monthly burn rate with respect to expenditures are approximately $90,000 a month.
And I'd add for the board, if you go back to the graph, Josh, that shows all four, I think that 90,000 is comparable to the first 4 months. So if you add the first 4 gray bars and take the average, it's about 90,000.
I think those gray bars are the forward-looking though. That's made through the rest of the year.
Yes, but as I said, I don't anticipate that changing from, you can see September, October, November, December, they're all at 90,000, and I would expect that would, barring anything that I am not made privy to, any information that I don't know, I would expect a $90,000 a month burn rate for January through March really at this point, I would expect it for the entirety of 2024, based on the information that I have.
I think we can use that for planning numbers, but I think we have a much fixed cost sort of beginning of the year, U.S. Postal Service.
Jacqueline, I have a question. I know it may not be collectible, but we've had some judgments where attorney fees have been awarded. Have we had track of that number, and what is that number?
I don't know what the number is. It is not segregated in the books of record, but I do know that that Craig, can you speak to that? I do believe that Craig and his firm there have tracked those dollars individually. I've spoken with Cameron, and I believe that that's the case.
And we are seeking fees in the active litigation that we have now. that I'll report in closed session to the board on. We've in the past received substantial fees in the Phelan matter.
Right.
We can quantify those for you. I don't have it at the top of my head.
That's already been paid though, right?
That's already been paid.
So we have some outstanding fees, we have judgment.
Yeah, we have liens on property
Right.
that are awaiting one of two actions. Either request we move forward with execution and sell the property, or we wait to get paid when they are refinanced or sold. We have several properties in that category.
Okay, that's something we should keep track of, although it's not collectible. It'd be good for everyone to realize that that's a debt that at some point we're going to collect on the property. But obviously, we have a decision to make today to avoid further problems.
I would like to add,
Oh, Jacqueline, I'm sorry.
I have some additional information. As we were talking here, I did what I'll call a back of the napkin glance at where we are with respect to budget, addressing an earlier question with respect to legal and engineering and administrative. And I can tell you, and again, these are back of the napkin and quick and dirty numbers. Legal is approximately 55% of their annual budget 4 months into the year. Engineering is approximately 45% of their budget 4 months into the year, and Hallmark administratively at 60%.
Thank you.
Chair Paris, we'd like to point out to the board that we do have one more slide that for the board to review, and that we, Josh and Jacqueline were participated in the advisory committee, or at least Josh did, and we summarized their suggestions in the last slide under this item.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Go ahead.
And just to clarify, these bullet points were taken straight from the advisory's written report. One of the very first bullet points that was pointed out was they wanted a temporary assessment to cover the cost that would allow the water master to accomplish 2023 tasks and rate study, and they caveated that by saying they want the rates to return to $5 assessments in 2024. That suggestion is very similar to what we're proposing here today, which is a supplemental assessment. The second bullet point says a proposed increase for the remainder of 2023, similar to the first bullet point. They also suggested going to the judge for a suggestion on how to fix our finances. They wanted a recommendation from the board for a solution. They also suggested changing the board meetings to every other month to sort of prolong the admin costs. They wanted to combine the admin meetings with the board meeting to sort of remove that extra fee from admin. And they wanted to raise the fees for applications, but I would like to point out that that is a reimbursable cost and will not fix your cash deficit. And the last bullet point there is just to eliminate the admin committee.
Okay, thank you. All public comment, please.
And maybe, but just ask, I mean, do we have an actionable item here to deal with this fiscal crisis?
There's no resolution suggested. If we go with the temporary additional administrative assessment, my view is it needs a public hearing, it needs a resolution. We could do that in the next month, but vote on it in June.
And Craig, the action item here is for the board to approve Hallmark Group's amendment number 2, authorizing us to complete this work in preparation for the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kyle, you're back.
Yes, I think there was another suggestion made at the Budget Committee by Jeff Siebert, and it was that there was a lot of water parked in the underground, people storing water here, Metropolitan Water District. I don't think they're paying anything. There's the 10% leave back. But if you charge $5 an acre foot on what they stored, you can't go to Los Angeles and park your car and expect to pay one day and leave it there for a month. So there's a chance of revenue there. Right?
That's creative. I think some of the parkers might say they're leaving 10% behind for their parking fee.
It's more than $5.
Okay, board, we have some decisions to make.
I did some math. I came up with $500,000, $240 through the end of the year, and the first 3 months at 90 makes it $1,000.
Same math as me.
Same math as me. We all agree on the math, but I'll give you my opinion on it. Being in a financial state of affairs and where we're at, it seems it seems premature to approve an $18,000 expenditure without having the budgeted balance at first. Same thing I've been saying since January. I feel we need to have a resolution to raise the budget by $3 an acre foot to cover this year's expenses. Have a public comment period at the earliest possible period for them to comment more on the $18,000 expenditure, make a decision at that point, do the rate analysis, and try and get on a steady path by the end of the year.
Can you make that a motion?
I don't know if I can. I don't think we have an actionable item.
If I'd like to clarify, whatever motion it is you make that is directing us to raise the assessment to, your suggestion, $3 is still out of scope for Hallmark and still would require an amendment for us to be able to complete that work.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, our scope of work did not contemplate doing a mid-year rate assessment hearing activity and the backup and support for that.
Oh, I understand that, absolutely. What I'm saying is let's get this increase done right as soon as possible for the $3. Give everybody a chance to come back, hear them out one more time on the rate assessment fee, have it voted on at that point, and try and have this thing resolved in a financial path going forward by the end of the year.
If that doesn't require any additional work by Hallmark, you can do that, but I don't know who's going to do that for you.
I think you're confused on what I'm saying. Step one, do the $3. Step two, make the vote on whether or not to pay you guys the additional fees to do the rate assessment.
Doing the $3 rate assessment requires additional work by Hallmark. Unless it's simply Craig typing up a note or someone typing up a note that says the rates are going up by $3, there's additional work that I would expect the public would want to see to explain that, like some of the questions you've received today about how do we get here and that type of thing.
Yeah, and if I could summarize some of those items that would be required, it would be a letter development. So when they receive this additional invoice, admin is not increasing their costs from phone calls from every single landowner asking, why am I receiving this random invoice with no explanation? Development of a letter, which is D1.
Okay.
2 would be all the work on Jacqueline to send the invoices, to create the invoices. 3 would be tracking all the invoices coming in and trying to get everybody to pay. Because I think we only anticipate, correct me if I'm wrong, Jacqueline, about 85% of people to pay, even the annual assessment. So it would still take a little bit of extra work to get those big ticket items. And those are just a quick summary of some of the tasks that we would need to do.
So
Well, then I'm
I'm
not prepared to vote until I know what those numbers would be.
Okay, so you're not going to vote for for amendment number 2 to the consulting services agreement to complete a rate assessment, outreach, and develop fiscal policy for the 2024.
Well, Kathy, what I'm saying by that is I think we have to hurry up and get the budget balanced.
Right.
Going from going from $5 to $10,
Right.
and doubling the rate.
So right now, though, you're not going to vote on that part.
I can't vote on that.
Right. So, and since you can't, I'm saying
Well, let's
I'm not.
talk this through a little bit.
Sure.
So there would be additional costs if, the first thing we'd have to do is notice a public hearing for next week. That, the consensus is we want Brandon's idea, $3 rate assessment. We understand that at the point that was approved, there's going to be extra costs for administration. So that would, we don't have, are you good with this? So we don't have to, the only thing we're doing is directing you to put on the agenda a public hearing, and Craig doing the necessary work so that we can have a public hearing and have a resolution, if this is the consensus of the board, to approve the $3. If that is approved, then obviously you're going to have extra administrative costs that hopefully would be paid out of that assessment. So
Chair Paris, I'm shaking my head no, because the projection we have is based on current workload. So the first thing out of the chute is to add more work to the projection. So I'm concerned that you'll be short the $3 assessment if that's what the math was behind Director Calandry's recommendation, was to get us through the end of the year. It did not include the extra costs associated with the rate assessment.
with the rate assessment, okay.
So you'll be
So it's your recommendation based upon the presentation that we approve, or at least have a discussion on a $5 assessment rather than a $3 assessment, and approve giving you guys the ability to increase your budget to do the work necessary to have all that completed, and that would get us through the first 3 months of next year, or just through the end of this year.
through the end of this year.
Okay.
And we understand that estimate would not include development of the cash flow or financial plan that Director Calandry said would have to be done at a later date. If he chose to do that, it would have to be taken up in next year's budget.
So you feel the $5 assessment would cover the additional costs to do all that this year?
To do all the cash flow analysis,
You're requesting an amendment for $18,000.
if you went to $5, Jacqueline, I'm looking at Jacqueline and Josh, if they've figured that out.
A $5 assessment would be approximately $356,000. That assumes that every single invoice is paid timely, and paid at all. So, I would default to Craig on the response to this next statement. My guess is that you would have a fair amount of discord with respect to sending out that supplemental, and that there may be hesitation for folks to pay. So, it's entirely possible that won't cure the problem. I don't know what the answer to that is, honestly, because if we short of incurring additional litigation to make them pay, now you're in. But a $5 assessment would bring on the fixed fee would be on the fixed production rate would be approximately $350,000.
Okay. And Jacqueline, another question. How much
Per acre foot.
Well, how much is there fees that have not been paid? Have we kept track of that?
Are you asking
The $5 assessment, how much for previous years has not been paid? And is
I have been tracking that, and I have it right here. Approximately 120,000 of, and that just included the larger invoices. There are some smaller ones out there, but so approximately 120,000. And I do expect that to be received by the end of June. And I made some headway again on that this morning. And I do understand that that we have received one check. I understand that another check is in the mail, and the third I made progress on this morning. So I think the majority of that will be coming in by the end of June.
okay. And question to Craig.
But that is included already in the cash flow, just FYI.
Understood. When assessments aren't paid, we have the ability to take legal action.
Yes, and receive fees
and receive fees for that.
Yes. Can I just summarize what I think we need to do? We need to address a motion to consider increasing the administrative assessment for this year to X amount of dollars, whatever it may be. Give notice of that, and it will be discussed at a public meeting at the June 26th June 28th board meeting. And just so the board knows that they approve that after public comment, we adopt a resolution next month on that topic. I need to go to the court immediately and get approval of it, which would give an opportunity for anybody to object. But it would be done post haste very quickly.
Because there is a difference in whether it's $3 to $5, and we are talking acre foot, not per person or anything else.
But I would recommend,
Assessment.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure everyone is understanding that is per acre foot.
I think the notice needs to at least give a range. I'd feel better if it was specific $5 increase in acre foot, but $3 to $5 gives adequate notice of what the public hearing is going to be about next June.
Let's maybe talk about that in just a second. You're going to be doing extra as well. Probably have factored in. Jacqueline, I heard you say, I think, that a $5 increase would generate, which is at $300,000 about. You said $350, but we don't collect all that. So.
Right. If we assume that, typically there's an 85% collection rate, at least initially, right? And there's always, additional efforts that are required for that extra 15 to 20%. But yes, approximately 356,000 based on production rights that were billed based on quantity of acre feet that was billed in January of 2023. A $5 per acre foot would produce 356,000. Taking into account the collectability rate, I'm guessing about 300,000.
Yeah. Okay. But
I would also warn that I think it's not going to be as well received as the January fixed fee that landowners are obviously accustomed to. So that collection rate could vary significantly. I wanted that to be on record.
Understood. Okay, I think I also understood that the projection for the end of the year was 240,000.
Yes, but right now I have it at 267.
So 270.
In the number in my graph is let's call it 270. That would be the deficit by December. Now I would highly encourage some of the items that the committee came up with respect to even just with respect to moving board meetings to every other month. Some of those were good ideas, because I think you can't just increase fees, you have to, at revenue, you have to also look at cutting costs and where can where can that be done? So, that's a critical, a very important part of managing your cash flow is looking at both sides, right?
Jacqueline, this is Brandon Landry again. You just told Director Brian it was 270 to the end of the year. Early on in your statement, you said it was 237 to get through the end of the year, and 270 was the projection for the first quarter of 24. Could you give me a little clarity on that?
I could. At first, when I was asked the question, I didn't have my spreadsheet up, and on the graph, I was looking at the graph between 2 and 3. It wasn't until I pulled my spreadsheet up that because in my head I was thinking it was 237, but it was 267. So I was just off by the time I actually pulled up the cash flow projection that I gave, and that is the same number that was distributed on May 11th. Was the $267,000 number is what is what was distributed on May 11th as the projected deficit by the end of the year. And then additionally, in this conversation, we've estimated approximately $90,000 per month as a burn rate. And so
it's fair to say the first quarter or the first few months in 24 would be about $270,000.
I think that's a fair statement based on the information that I have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so that's where I'm going for this. First of all, my concern is that $5 is what our assessment is right now. That generates $300,000. That's our annual budget. The revenue we have to work with. For half a year, we're saying we're going to spend $207,000. That should terrify everybody. And then, yeah, to Brandon's point there, that it may be 270, round up to, we'll keep it at 270. 270 for the rest of the year, but if we don't collect revenue until maybe March, you're really looking at that plus. So we're looking at 500,000, which is more than 3 to 5. That's
right. I also would like to state that does not include the additional efforts of legal and administration to address the issue, as Josh and Jim explained. The additional cost to move this initiative forward. So, that is not contemplated in the cash flow projection that I currently delivered.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Eric and Russ, you guys talked about this in the administrative committee?
Do a fashion.
Well, I'll pick up. So I think that this entire board, and I would say the public and everybody's advisories are all committed to fixing our financial crisis. I think we will do a better job here than the federal government does. And part of that is we need to address this not just this year. And to me, keep kicking the can of trying to put together what I'd say from a private operator is a fiscal plan that is multi-year. If we're really going to balance a budget, it's not just dealing with this issue next year and the year after that and the year after that. And what in the private sector we do is put together a financial forecast, 3 years, 5 years, and we look at that and we amend it and we deal with it so we don't hit a wall like we're today. So for my support of, and we do need to make a change, I'm 100% for that, and my voice is that admin needs, and my support is we need to task staff to look at our forecast, and we need to be able to look at that, and we need to be able to communicate that. So it's a key and critical part of this step going forward that I need to support.
Okay. And Russ, your comments on that?
We're up the same.
So is the consensus in the administrative committee, which I don't know rep, the water provider rep, is that we approve the assessment for the or approve the rate, approve the increase for Hallmark to do the study and move forward with a supplemental assessment.
I don't know that we talked about that in depth, and I don't know that we would be able to say nothing to that.
and that's the consensus we need to get. And you're exactly right. It's kind of like for the state going on in Washington, a debt ceiling. We don't want to raise our debt ceiling, and if we don't, we're not doing what our job is to do. I mean, the court has tasked us with running this water master board, and they're doing it in a way that can go on in the future, and so that's the decision we have to make. We have to get a consensus of all 5 of us to do this. It's clear we can't just say we're not going to do anything at this point, and so we have to come to consensus of what we do to get us out of this situation, and I'm sure Mr. McCarthy and President Biden are talking about these type of things right now. But we're doing this in public, and we need to reach a consensus, and we just can't kick the ball anymore, and we have for quite a while. We knew back in 2017 or 16 when we started that a $5 assessment did not get us through forever, and we have been fortunate that we've run this board as efficiently as we've been able to do, but it came with a lot of contributions from the public water suppliers, actually, AVEC and Palmdale and everybody that contributed to allowing us to do this. And in fact, when we started, I think AVEC subsidized this board for a year or so. At this point, we have to take responsibility, we have to do what's right, and we have to make a decision. And we've had some good recommendations. I think that we bite the bullet now. We do we give Hallmark the ability to do a financial forecast. Let's do it right. Let's look into the future. And we do a supplemental assessment for the $5. That's a recommendation by our staff and I think by our attorney at this point.
Yes, and to act today has the benefit of we can start the 30-day notice period for the June meeting. Otherwise, I'm afraid
right, exactly.
we're going to miss it.
Yeah, we can't kick this down any further. And that's a recommendation we're given by the professionals we've hired to keep us going, and I think that's the consensus we should get to. It's hard. It's going to be, obviously we want the public input into it, but we can't kick this ball any further. So let's move it.
I'll just make a comment to your point in 2017. I was in the public and on the advisory committee, and his director, Leo, was one of the founding directors here, made that comment. I think it was the first statement out of his mouth, and it was the last statement as a director. So I think he has a vision that now we're dealing with today.
Right. And I was on that board, and I was there when Leo made that comment, and we all knew that, and we worked as hard as we could to keep the assessment as low as we could for as long as we could. But now it's pretty obvious some changes need to be. So
I would like to make another comment as well. I just really want to stress, and perhaps it's been said too much, but I would like to say one more time that Hallmark has been requesting that we do these activities since December, and it has not yet. It has yet to be approved. And what I want to say about that is that I would have very much liked to come to this board in last month, the month before, with a very comprehensive financial report that showed where exactly you're going to be, what exactly the fees need to be raised to, and what that would look like over the course of a few years. But to the extent that I am trying to, and Hallmark Group is trying to reserve the cash balances and not step outside our scope of services and not incur additional costs for the water master, we have, just kind of picked it, trying to get enough information together to have decisions made. So I appreciate everyone's understanding that the information that you have thus far is even that is more than we have been authorized to do but the importance of bringing this information to the table warranted that extra work. So,
Jacqueline,
Would have liked it done and rated, but.
well, yeah, but you did not, we didn't give you the approval to do that, so we're here now. What is the solution? We've been on this topic for 45 minutes.
So I'm saying you should expand the range so that you give us some latitude to go beyond $5, but they can't tell you that 5 is exactly right to get.
Craig, what's your...
Amount to be determined. That's okay? Yes.
I like that.
There's notice, a range expected to be possibly or likely in the $3 to $5 range, but in final amount to be determined.
And do you need a consensus right now for you to put that on the agenda? Should we wait to the point where we put things on the agenda?
I think we proceed by a motion now to move forward with the public meeting on June 28th to consider adopting a supplemental assessment in amount to be determined.
Do I have that motion?
Derek, I will make that motion.
Derek makes a motion. Is there a second? Second by Russ. Is there any further discussion?
Right. This is going to be a big fight. Everybody hold on. I'm just telling you guys.
Well,
So go ahead and make them. I'll back the motion for it not to be exceeded, but just be prepared.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to proceed with a public hearing and with a resolution for our next meeting at the time that we get a rate study concurrently with that. It's been second. Is there any further discussion? And John, will you have that motion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Boy, that brings us to item number 11.
Thank you, Chair, for getting us through that.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I'm going to buy you all parliamentary procedure book next time. Consideration and possible action on the annual audit. Update on annual audit.
Jack, I'll turn that over to Jack.
Jacqueline, go ahead, please.
Jacqueline, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm here, yes. I don't have much new to report on the annual audit. The 2022 audit is progressing, and I spoke with the auditors again yesterday and provided some additional documentation that they had requested. I would hope, as I reported to the admin committee, that they are able to wrap things up here in the next week or two, and I have requested that I meet with them regarding the issues with the 2021 audit and the presentation of restricted cash amounts, as well as the other additional two discrepancies in the audit. Prior to the drafting of the 2022 report, they have responded positively to that, so they would contact me as soon as they're ready to discuss that. And that is the status of the current year audit.
Okay, any comments, questions? Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I do have a comment on your memo, just with the bullet point 3. Fixed fee revenue.
Yes.
Can you walk the board and public through that? I think that's very helpful for us to understand in what we're dealing with even today.
The fixed fee revenue for 2022, fixed fee assessments are billed in January of each year for the current, to fund the current fiscal year. And the 2022 fixed fee assessments were inadvertently entered in QuickBooks in the books of record, the general ledger, in December of 2021. What that did essentially was move that revenue back to 2021. This was not caught by the auditors. A simple variance analysis would have shown that the revenue for 2020 for the 2 years, the year-over-year variance was significantly askew. So that revenue is not showing in 2022, but was in fact reported in the 2021 audit as revenue. And it needs to be in 2022. It's 2022 revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any other questions? And moving on to 11B, approval of Hallmark amendment for financial statement discrepancy resolution. Is that Jacqueline?
That's Jacqueline.
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I'm sorry, is this the, could you,
Yes, I'll speak to that, Jacqueline. So
well, I was just going to ask if you could move the slides down for me. But you're welcome to address it. You're very well versed in that as well.
Go ahead, Joshua.
This is just an amendment to Hallmark contract for all the audit scope work we did to fix the previous audit issues that were not made aware to us in this transition. So we weren't contemplating fixing previous year audits, so that was not included in our original scope. And I would like to remind the board that the advisory committee voted unanimously, to approve this.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'm getting all the spending motions, so I'll continue. I'll make this motion to approve the amended Hallmark.
You're going to be very popular in the land
I
of group.
think so.
Is there a second for that motion? Motion made and seconded. Any public discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. That brings us to item 12. I'm going to take a 1 minute, please. I'm not quite there. We're going to run into a scheduling issue, and I'm trying to think the best way to handle this. So we set up our closed session in the small conference room. Okay, we can take care of that. ABAC is doing a presentation in the large conference room with members of City of Palmdale. We did the City of Lancaster a few meetings ago, and that's supposed to start around 12, and I don't want them having to sit through our closed session and do nothing. Is there anybody from Palmdale here yet? Okay. And so, no, I'm doing this in public. Matt, is that going to work out? We'll set the large conference room up for the presentation with the city, and then you and I will probably go back and forth, and you have other members of ABAC doing the presentation with us, right? Okay, because you and I are going to be sharing post session and the rest of the meeting. Okay, got it. Thank you for that brief discussion. We're now on item 12, and for those who were here at the beginning of the meeting, item A has been postponed to after our closed session.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Richard Marcus. I'm an attorney for Craig Van Dam.
Okay.
I sent an email yesterday to Mr. Pardon. I just want to make sure he received it because it has relevant information pertaining to your closed session. We are offering a full indemnification of the board and its members with regard to any action that's taken, and I have that in writing. I can give you a copy of my letter.
Okay, and your name, sir? I'm sorry.
Richard Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. And if you provide that to our attorney, that can be useful in closed session. And I think the Van Dams are aware that for obvious reasons I'm recusing myself on anything to do with it. Thank you. And Matt would be taking my place as my alternate. Okay, so that brings us to 12, item B, Steve and Denise Cody to West Valley County Water. And I think that's, and for all of you, so we're going to continue item 12A till after our closed session. I expect maybe, hopefully around 12:30. That should work. We will reconvene and take it up in public session. Well, I won't, but someone will.
Second.
Okay.
Alright.
On 12B, and Arden, is that you?
Yes. Hi, this is Arden from Todd Groundwater, calling in from the Zoom call. So item 12B is for a one-time transfer of carryover water from Stephen and Denise Godey to West Valley County Water District. And so this is a one-time transfer of 50 acre-feet of carryover water. And Stephen and Denise Godey have a production right of 247 acre-feet per year and currently have about 1,085 acre-feet of carryover water for use in 2023. They're located in the Central Antelope sub-area, and West Valley County Water District is in the West Antelope sub-area. West Valley County Water District has a permanent production right of 40 acre-feet per year. And in 2022, they produced 110 acre-feet. They've been slightly decreasing their water use, but it hasn't caught up to the ramp down decrease. And so the water levels near West Valley County Water District show relatively stable levels. And there's a well that's directly right next to the parcel, and it's actually showing increasing water levels since 2018. And so this transfer is so that they can continue having production that is over their permanent production right to kind of make up for the decreases with ramp down. And so in our analysis, given that this is just a shift in the location of water use and it's in the same sub-area, and the water levels it's not in the same sub-area, but the water levels are stable in this area. Todd Groundwater finds that the potential for material injury is negligible, and the advisory committee unanimously approved or recommended approval of this application. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolution R2338, the transfer application between Stephen and Denise Godey to West Valley County Water?
This is Brandon. I make the motion to approve.
Motion made by Brandon. Is there a second? Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion for the transfer of approving resolution R2338, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carried unanimously. We're now on consideration possible action new production application. This is going to be R2339 and so a DWP. Arden, is that you or is that going to be?
This is me as well. Yes.
Okay.
So this is a new production application for the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And this is for 1 acre-foot per year maximum for a new well that would be used for emergency firefighting purposes. This is for an electrical substation in Rosamond in the Willow Springs sub-area, just for emergency fire protection. And the fire demand is calculated to be 0.22 acre-feet. The City of Los Angeles believes that the city is already a party to the judgment and intervention is not necessary. And so given the small amount of proposed production and the obligation to pay a replacement water assessment, material injury is expected to be negligible. And the advisory committee unanimously voted to recommend approval for this application.
Thank you, Arden.
You're welcome.
Oh, are you done? I'm sorry. Okay, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there a motion to approve resolution 2339 regarding the new production application for LADWP? Derek, I'll make that motion. Motion made by Derek. Second by Russ. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the new production application, resolution R2339, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Brings us to consideration possible action on new point of extraction. And is that you, Joshua, or Arden? Go ahead.
It's me again. Thanks. So this is a new point of extraction application from an existing well from Gene Wheeler's farm. And so if y'all remember back in February this year, February 2023, the Water Master Board approved a one-time transfer of 146 acre-feet from Nick and Janet Van Dam to Wheeler Farms for use at the same location where the transfer originated. These are it's two wells that are on a property in the central Antelope sub-area, and on the same property where Wheeler Farms received that 146 acre-feet one-time transfer. They would like to produce 500 acre-feet from the same well. And so because it's a greater amount than the transfer was approved for, we recommended a new point of extraction application in order for them to use water on that property. And so this application is for 500 acre-feet to be used in 2023 on the property in the central Antelope sub-area. And when we looked at the historic production at the same parcel, the production from these wells has varied from about 146 acre-feet per year to 689 acre-feet in 1 year. So the 500 acre-feet is within the range of water that within the range of the production volume from this parcel and these wells in the past. And when we looked at water levels in the area, the water levels were stable near these parcels. So because this does not represent new production and it's similar to past production at this parcel from the same wells in the past, Todd Groundwater finds the potential for material injury to be negligible. And the advisory committee unanimously recommended this application for approval. Are there any questions?
Any questions from anybody?
With this being a new point of extraction, did we verify certified meters on that well?
Yes, there are meters on both of the wells at this parcel, and they have been reporting the production consistently in the past annual production reports submitted to the Water Master.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution R2340, the new point of extraction for the Gene Wheeler Farms?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Brandon. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Kathy. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution number R2340, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We're now on the administrator's report.
Yeah, I would just like to update the board and the public that in contact with AVEC, Matt Nelson at AVEC, the replacement water assessment will be presented to the board in June to vote on and approve.
Great. Any indication on what that's going to look like?
I would love to send that answer that question.
Yeah.
Well, it's currently 5:23, so it'll probably be more than time.
For those who
Very diplomatic answer. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Matt. And now, that's a good report, Joshua?
report, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Joshua, I just want to thank you for all your hard work and getting really positive comments of how you're interacting with the community and everything. So we really appreciate that. Thank you. Item 16, Water Master Engineers Report. Phyllis and Arden.
This morning, good morning. I'm sorry you couldn't hear me before. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you well, Phyllis.
Okay, great. I need to steal the screen from the administrator, and we will go through some slides this morning regarding 3 items for my report. And let me just...
And Phyllis, while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Matt, you're ready to see our guests when they come in and escort them to the big conference room. And Angel is the small conference room ready for our closed session. Outstanding. Okay, Phyllis, I just stalled for you for a little bit, so go ahead.
Did the time. Let's get this screen out of our way and go back to where we should have started here. And we will go through quickly 3 items. The first item, 16A, is the new production and small qualified pumpers tables that we present in every board packet at each monthly meeting. There's no change to either of these tables from the last month's board package. I'll be glad to go through them in more detail, but I think everyone is kind of used to seeing them. And so I might just say that they are the same as last month. And do you have any questions? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to move forward then. A very brief update again for the model development. We are still working on the things that were in progress that we reported on last April, but we do have the completed model domain. The red area is the current USGS model domain, and you can see it did not cover the entire blue area of the adjudicated area. Additional hydraulic parameters associated with it, so the model development is moving forward as scoped. We are continuing to work on the deficiencies in the packages that are summarized there on this slide. Any comments on the model development?
I do.
Okay.
Just on that, I mean, this was a wet year, and it's a great opportunity to get data. I'm just curious on how successful we were based upon what your goal of the model is versus what we actually were able to attain.
It's a great question, and we did not do a detailed recharge analysis yet for this year, but we still have the data, and so we will be able to do that in the future. The reason that we haven't done it yet for 2020 coming up on next, we'll see some effects of that great recharge that came into the basin this year.
Thank you.
Moving on to the annual report update. This is the 7th annual report that we've done. It's due to the court August 1st. We have the 4 primary sections in the text as before. The appendices is where we always include all of our water accounting for calendar year 2022. It's essentially the same format that you have seen before with updated and some new information. Just to give you an assessment quickly of the state of the basin, reminding you it's the 7th year since the final judgment and the 5th and final year of the ramp down period, which ended December 31st of 2022. Groundwater production has declined as per required by the ramp down period and the judgment, heading toward the native safe yield that was estimated at 82,300 acre feet a year. I think if you see the total production numbers that are shown there on the bar graph, you're going to go, well, wait a minute, 2020, 2021, and 2022 looks like it's above that native safe yield number. And that's because total production that's shown here also includes recovery of stored water from the banking project. So that stored water is not part of the native groundwater. And if we correct those numbers for the stored water, and we were lucky to have the stored water that we could remove from the subbasin. And so we've taken away that pumping, which is now shown in that orange color. You can see that there was a significant amount of production in 2020, 2022 that was recovery of that stored water. So we were lucky that we had it in the basin. We're lucky to have it. But again, that's not reflective of pumping above the native safe yield. This water had already been recharged, and that's not, as I said before, moving the native groundwater from storage. And so when we do take away that orange bar, I think you can see that the blue bars, which represent production from the groundwater basin, that's more applicable to the issues of ramp down, you can see that we are indicating that the numbers are actually below the native safe yield of the basin. So we're doing a good job with respect to getting that ramp down. I will note, and I've got a slide in just a minute, there's incomplete production reporting, and we need to get a little aggressive about that. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, so hang on to that thought. We have updated the hydro. Oops, did I have a question?
Just if you can go back to that slide. So you answered the first question was non-reporters. So we're going to get to that. The second part is that actually what this doesn't show is production right holders that are banking or reserving. I forget what the judge said. I'm not thinking about the right word. If they're holding it over, carryover. Thank you. Carryover. It does not show the impact of that, which I'm guessing.
So did you get that? It's kind of a question and a comment.
Yeah, it is a question and a comment.
Where do you show the carryover, Phyllis, within the annual report, or do you? That's a summary of the question.
Yes, we absolutely do, and it's in the appendices A and B and C that have the water accounting. There has always been and always will be the column that tabulates the amount of carryover per parties, and you can add that up from those totals.
And my point to that is the production right holder, right? You go, boy, why don't I have more production rights? Because we're actually getting that's a positive, and so I think it's helpful to see that number.
I agree.
Very good question. And Phyllis, do you, in the annual report, I don't recall, do you have any type of, rather than, I know it's in the charts, but do we have any type of graph that shows how that grows every year, or the total amounts, or is it just we have to add it?
Where amount grows, is that what you're asking?
For carryover.
To look at it over several years, but this is a draft annual report, and we might not be able to get that information in the draft that's getting ready to be posted, but we can certainly include something about that. It's relatively straightforward to do in the revised draft. So I'm going to take that as a comment from the board on the draft report and add this information, summary information about carryover into the text. Is that what I'm hearing would be helpful?
Yeah, I think that'd be real helpful for us to understand, is how much carryover there is, maybe from each of the prior years, because at some point that carryover is going to show up, and we might see. I don't know how it's going to be reflected in the report, but it might show that we're using over the state yield, but that would be a good part of the carryover. Would that be correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, give us the opportunity to get that in the text for you, and I think we can make it clear where we stand. It's actually a very good comment, because the advisory committee has also been talking about the issue of carryover water and how it's being represented. We are going to see the need to move carryover water that has been in the basin for 10 years. We're not quite there yet, but we will be at the end of 2026, and we will need to move carryover water into storage agreements for parties if they don't want to lose their carryover water, because there's a 10-year limit in the judgment. And we will be working.
Yeah, I just had a question from the public about that recently. Currently in our rules and regulations, we don't have a mechanism to do that. And are we working on that?
Working on a process that the water master engineer is going to make this as efficient and straightforward for parties as we possibly can, because I think there's very little from a hydrologic impact that we have. And in addition to that, we're going to put in this annual report a summary of where we are on carryover water, so we can talk. We've got a little bit of time to talk about that, but our anticipation is that we can make this process quite efficient when we get to 2026, which is when we need to start doing it to make the deadline of early 2027.
Yeah, it'd be good for the public to have a really good understanding of how they're going to be able to move their carryover into a storage agreement.
In a place where they can actually look it up and keep track of it, and they could actually see it somewhere.
Calculate these things cumulatively. So the question was the question before was how carryover has changed over time, and I'm going to need to go back to previous year tables to help you with that. But for everyone's account, which are maintained on the website that you can go and take a look at, you can see the exact amount of carryover water that you have for this year, and that is a cumulative number. You don't have to go back yourself and try to add anything up. That's the total amount of carryover water that each party has for use in 2023, and then, we do that every year. Does that make sense?
And then the next dimension, the carryover water and groundwater elevation, material impact.
Did you hear that comment from Russ?
I did. Thank you. Yes, I did. Thank you, Russ. Can you still hear me?
More like this. Did you ask for me to repeat it?
No, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Phyllis.
Okay. Let's go to the hydrograph, which is exactly Russ's comment, which is, how are the groundwater levels responding? Your question, of course, was to carryover, so we're going to look at that separately. But for today, just wanted to say that we have updated the 17 representative basin hydrographs. We've actually updated all of the 100-plus hydrographs that we keep in the basin. But the 17 representative wells have more frequent and historical information and data, so those are the ones that we put to show how we can track trends and fluctuations over time. Each of these hydrographs has a 26-year period from 1997 to 2022 through calendar year 2022, and we've actually added some 2023 data to them when available. I think you can see that clearly there are rising trends in the areas of banking because we're doing a good job in storing water as much as we can. We've been taking a lot of water out of storage over the last few years because of drought conditions, but over time we certainly are seeing increasing trends in the banking areas. And I think that we are finally seeing some of our declining trends stabilize and flatten as well. So I think the good news is that the basin looks like it's responding well with respect to water levels. There's a change in storage raster that's quite colorful that you've seen before. Yellow and brown means areas of groundwater in storage decline or decreasing the volume of groundwater in storage just for that 1 year period. We do this every year, and it's required also for the signal reporting to do a change in groundwater volume over calendar year 2022. And we do that by looking at water level contour maps in spring 2022 and subtracting that from spring 2023. So it's a little bit different. This basin does all of its hydrologic calculations on a calendar year. And so when we look at calendar year for 2022, that would have been drought conditions, and we would have been a decline through the entire basin. But the way that we set up our methodology is to kind of adjust it a little bit more so that we're looking at water year conditions. And in doing so, we're able to see that there are a lot of water level rises in the basin, even though 2022 calendar year was really the severe drought continuation of the critically dry conditions in the basin. Because of that precipitation, both snowfall in the San Gabriels, and we'll see some of that snow melt continue to raise water levels. We do see blue areas in the basin, which means areas that we have added groundwater to storage. Again, the drought-related declines are seen over most of the area, and in some areas of banking, we see them even browner. You can see over there in the western portion of the Ada Westside Water Bank,
thank you very much.
Brown areas where we've removed groundwater in storage, but it's groundwater that we put in storage for removal. So again, this is not a negative on the native safe yield. It's just that we have stored water that we can now recover and rely on. So the banking projects are really helping the hydrologic situation in the basin quite a bit. We did have wet conditions again in early 2023, and that provided some recharge and available water for the banking areas. So you do see many areas that are also very blue, which indicates that we are putting water in storage for future use, both in the basin and statewide. Our overall increase of groundwater in storage is seen from spring 2022 to spring 2023, and this year it's a positive number because of those wet conditions in 2023. And these are the numbers. We do this annually. by sub-area, and so you can just see the calculations. We're just showing a little bit of our homework there of how we get to the number. You can read in the text, and it's similar to what we've presented in the past. But the summary here is for groundwater and storage in this basin. We have increased that by 7,368, which are, again, reflective of wet conditions, especially in the upper watersheds in the winter and spring of 2023 that we're all very familiar with. So not only do we show this annual change in storage every year, but everyone likes to know kind of how it's changed over time. So we always include a graph that goes back several years so that you can get some kind of a picture of what has happened in the past. And if you look at the cumulative since the final judgment, starting with year 2016, you can see that overall there has been a decline or a decrease in the volume of groundwater in the basin. We have a term, groundwater in storage, that use of the word storage is not reflective just of the banking. That's the entire amount of groundwater that's in storage in the basin. So it's really a groundwater volume. And since the final judgment, that cumulative number is about 50,000 acre feet, primarily, again, due to drought conditions and the banking recovery that we've seen in 2020 and 2021. 50,000 may sound like a big number, but if you consider that when we are recharging, the numbers are equivalent to that or much larger, and with additional banking in the basin, those numbers are going up, then you can see that we really just fluctuate a lot in this basin due to storage, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's very helpful for the basin. Moving to
Unless you have a question.
So yeah, that slide is helpful, thank you. But what would be helpful too is inflows and outflows, and we see the net effect of that, but it's hard for me to compare a 21 to a 2016. So I'm assuming that's in your report. This is just
it is not in the report. And here's why, because we have not had good tools to be able to do a detailed accounting for that water budget numbers. So we have been relying on the change in storage from these water level contours. That's why we've been promoting and recommending that the board commit to the development of a model so that we can do that necessary calculation of natural recharge on a monthly basis, an annual basis, and then pull those numbers into a detailed accounting of inflows and outflows. But at this point in time, we have the resultant numbers that are indicated by the water levels in the basin. So we know that if an area declines in the basin, groundwater is being removed from that storage, and if the water levels rise, groundwater is being added in that area. And so it's only a mass balance at this point, Derek, but we are very close, and that's why we're working hard to get the model going so that we can do a much more detailed accounting of the inflows and outflows.
So just for laymen, I think what I hear is this is an extrapolation of what the water levels are doing, and then you're extrapolating what the actual balance is, right? Okay. Thank you.
Moving to subsidence, this is remote sensing data that are now available free online from the Department of Water Resources. And we are beginning to download this information to give you a snapshot going forward of potential inelastic land subsidence and elastic land subsidence in the basin. So this is INSAR data that we have pulled together and cumulatively put together from 2015 at the time of the end of the judgment through 2022. So this is a cumulative map of land subsidence since that time. What's really being measured here is vertical displacement. And that vertical displacement is an indicator of land subsidence, but there's also other factors that can affect vertical displacement of the ground surface. And so those are tried, the folks that develop these algorithms try to pull some of that out, but there is some error associated with that. So they do emphasize that we're really just looking at vertical displacement. So I just want to say that, you can see the green areas and the blue areas in the basin. Those are areas where there's been no negative displacement or indications of land subsidence in the past. We don't have land subsidence indicated in those areas, primarily because of the subsurface geology, also coupled with areas that have not seen the water level declines as much as we see in the central portion of the basin. And in those central areas where we have seen historical subsidence, the cumulative amount of vertical displacement is quite small. The yellow areas indicate areas where cumulative vertical displacement has been up to 1.2 inches, and in the orange areas up to 2.4 inches. These are similar areas and similar rates as we have seen on the historical subsidence in the basin. So it looks as if nothing significant has changed with respect to the subsidence picture. And our strategy, of course, with the judgment is that we want to avoid long-term groundwater levels that are below historical low levels, because that's when we begin to depressurize the clays and potentially induce or trigger new subsidence. There's always a lag of old subsidence, which is what we're continuing to see here, because in these areas we don't have historical low water levels. So those are the two things that we want to kind of continually monitor: water levels with respect to avoiding going as low as we have historically, and these INSAR data, which will kind of keep us up to speed on what's happening in the basin. Any questions on the subsidence? The compliance piece. So we have only about 80% of the exhibits 3 and 4 parties that have Water Master approved meters. 80% may sound large to most people, but as long as it's been and as hard as it's been to get compliance with meter installation and testing, our reporting is still inconsistent, and we still have quite a few wells in the basin. Now, a lot of these wells perhaps are not pumping. We do have parties that say, why do I have to have an approved meter on my well? I'm not using my well, and so we ask that they demonstrate to us that equipment has been pulled from that well so that the well can't be used. But nonetheless, we still have incomplete compliance. And so as a result of that, we want to continue to insist that these are at least at a minimum conditions before anything else is approved for that party. And in particular, this issue of not reporting production, it is incomplete. You can see from the percentages there, I've just showed missing production reports. Production reporting is fundamental to the monitoring of safety components, and that's the Water Master Engineer's charge under the judgment. Administrative staff has been fabulous. They proactively put together a notice, a reminder notice that was strongly worded that, hey, you didn't report your production and we really need you to. If there are parties that are listening to this and they go, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me because I've got a well, but I no longer produce water from it, I need to tell you, you have to report 0. We really need you to fill out that form and put a 0 on there, because we're trying to keep a good accounting of the wells, the active wells that we have in the basin, and it's our charge to make sure that we have complete production reporting for this understanding. So shout out to Joshua for taking the initiative here, but we may need more enforcement measures in the future to achieve compliance. Sometimes they trickle in, and we get reports from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and good, we'll take them. But that also produces a real problem and expense with respect to redoing the accounts. And we don't, once the board approves the annual report, we feel that the numbers from the water accounts are approved for that year. And unless we've made an error, which obviously we would correct immediately, but unless that's the case, we just ask that, we need the reporting to occur according to the timelines that we have. And so I have we had a meeting with administrative staff. I'm sorry, my dog's a wildlife out there. Jackrabbits here. We have had a meeting with administrative staff and Watermaster Council, and it was a very good, urgent meeting of, we really need to have this happen. So I know that, again, Joshua was very proactive and took steps on his own to make sure that parties got notices right away when they didn't report. He continues to show tables of delinquent reporting in your packet, and we want to keep on top of this as best as we can. And I know that Craig has something that he's going to say about this also in his update. So, excuse me, we're now at schedule, and here is what we are proposing as our tentative schedule for the annual report. We'd like to get an initial draft on the website as soon as possible. There will be some portions that are incomplete because when we don't have the reporting, if there's a new production report, draft, but we want to get it out so everyone can see what it looks like, and we need comments back on that initial draft by June 16th. We'll turn those around, and at least by June 30th, we'll get a revised draft posted again to allow everyone to see a more complete and finished product. Final comments on that due by July 14th. We anticipate having a public hearing in at the July board meeting. I've just got the date there of the regular meeting where we will review the report, get comments, any additional public comments that anyone wants to make, excuse me, and make recommendations for final revisions, and then obtain approval from the court. And then Craig has always helped us get the final submitted annual report to the court, and then we will also be doing our SGMA reporting at that time. So I'm sorry for running through that so quickly, but I was trying to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that the board meeting is running a bit late today, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Phyllis? Galen, come on up and...
Hi, Phyllis. I just had one question. I was curious what the total banked water was in acre feet in our valley.
Phyllis, you cut up for a minute. Why don't you start over?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a little earbud difficulty today. Galen, I don't have that number with me, but if you will give me an opportunity when I post that report on the 2nd, I will email you and tell you exactly where to find that information in the report. How's that for?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Phyllis. Any other questions?
I do have one question on the, sorry.
Brandon, go ahead.
On the enforcement side, Craig, obviously we don't have the funding to go out and do enforcement. What authority do we have as board members to do well inspection?
We have authority to investigate misuse of water in the basin. That is the failure to file timely reports, the failure to meter when required under the judgment. We have the ability to get injunctive relief from the court stopping new production that's in violation of the terms of the judgment and get our fees and costs back for that. One thing Director Bryden mentioned last month was what to do about these delinquent production reports. Same thing, we have the ability to enforce on those. I'm going to suggest next month taking it a different step and giving notice, but assuming that the full production right has been used by those parties that are not producing reports. Unless you produce a report, we're going to assume that your right to produce is exactly what the judgment says it is.
Would we need to amend our rules and regulations to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think
Can we get that put on a possible action item for next month?
Yeah, because we've been kicking the compliance and these people that are not abiding by it, and it's not fair to all those that do. We're in a fiscal crisis, and we need to get tough.
And another question, would we be able to, not today because we don't have any money, but in the future contract with a public law enforcement agency, either with the cities or the county, to do enforcement for us?
I don't know of anything that would prevent us from doing that. I mean, it fulfills the goals of the judgment, which is to make sure that this is being done across the board with everyone who is a party to the judgment. I just want to make sure, is that the most efficient way to do it?
Yeah, I it's just a question.
Yeah.
Just for planting seeds
I don't
in the future.
I'm not aware of what would prevent us from doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
A mini brainstorm.
Yeah. And you're...
Yeah, just a comment to Phyllis. I mean, I think sometimes this is a great report. It's what our responsibilities, based in management, and we've been dealing with so many other things, especially today. I never feel that you have to rush. From my board seat, the list is critical, especially when we get that model completed.
Thank you.
Rob, it looks like someone has their hand raised.
Oh, somebody out there in the world has their hand raised. Do we know who it is, or it's just a number? Okay, phone number out there who has your hand raised. Would you like to ask Phyllis a question?
Yes. This is Jeff Siebert. Phyllis, you referenced... I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I stepped on you. Can you state your name so everybody knows and go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Jeff Siebert. Phyllis, I'd like to know what website were you in reference to be able to monitor your carryover water? Hello?
Maintain all of the... Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I can hear you now.
Okay. We maintain all of our water accounting spreadsheets on the Watermasters website. So you can go directly to the Watermasters website and see that.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. Also, I have a question for the board.
If it has to do with Phyllis's report, we'll take it. Otherwise, I think you missed our public session. But go ahead, Jeff.
The water bankers, obviously there's administrative duties that we fulfill. That's why I made the suggestion the other day about a fee for that, is because they have to be administrated. So that was just backup for my suggestion of the storage fees.
Got it. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else in the public with any questions for Phyllis? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 17, General Counsel's report.
The closed session.
Thank you, Phyllis. Great report.
Thanks,
Appreciate seeing you.
Closed session will handle the pending litigation and possible other litigation matters. With respect to the delinquent annual reports we've just mentioned, there's a comprehensive memo starting at page 118 of your packets on what the different enforcement options are: injunctive relief, fees, and costs that are recoverable by us from enforcement actions. That memo is dated back in June of 2018. So this question comes up regularly. It's one of the first things my firm addressed when we came aboard in 2017. So instead of repeating the same work over, we used the memo back from June of 2018. We never want to neglect the power of a board member doing collection matters.
We're sending out Kathy door to door. It'll be okay.
Right. We do, and last, the other pending litigation, it's not litigation, it's motions to intervene that we have with several parties that have that obligation based on their transfer water applications. And we do follow those and make sure that that's being complied with. So we'll leave the litigation matters to closed session. If any comments questions about enforcement, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. That brings us to board members. Future agenda items. I think we put several on. So, and that brings us to closed session. And guys, I'm sorry. We're going to go into closed session. As soon as we come out of closed session, we'll get to item 12A immediately upon that. Normally we don't have to do that, but I really appreciate your understanding and patience. So I can't give you an exact timing on closed session. I would hope we can be back out here by 1 o'clock. We'll move it as quickly as we can.
Chair Ferris, I'd like to remind you we need a motion to go into closed session.
Yeah, I would understand that. I just wanted to let everyone know what we're doing in the public. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
We need full
Yes,
board.
sorry for interrupting. I was trying to catch him before you ran out.
Restroom break. Well, I've been torturing everybody here for 2.5 hours, so we'll just be patient and let Derek do what Derek has to do.
Well, then, if I'm not going to take a break, I probably...
Everybody go take your break real quick until Derek comes back. Nice try, Joshua.
You want me to take a quick lunch?
Yep.
Chair Ferris. Okay, is there a motion to go to closed session? Motion made by Brandon, second by Derek. Second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion's carried. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we go into closed